Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. I'm James Baggott, I'm the founder of Car Dealer magazine, and today on the show I'm chatting to Nathan Coe, CEO of advertising giant Auto Trader. Good afternoon, Nathan.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us and giving up some of your time. So just a quick intro for people who don't know you, Nathan. Nathan, you were appointed to the board as Chief Operating Officer in April 2017 and as Chief Financial Officer in July 2017. You got the top job in March this year. What a time to take over. You joined Auto Trader in 2007 and oversaw the transition from a magazine business to a pure digital company. Quite a transition that has been. And this included launching a number of new business areas, including the company's early entry and growth in mobile and online. Prior to that, you were at Telstra, Australia's leading telecommunications company, where you led mergers and acquisitions and corporate development for the media and internet businesses. Nathan, thank you very much for joining us. I know you're a busy man. You've probably had an incredibly busy year. Just how tough has it been for everyone at Auto Trader?
Well, I think, it's been tough for everyone everywhere, hasn't it? And that's no different for people in our business. I think that the worries about health, the need to transition to working from home for many of our people, younger people living potentially on their own, being isolated in their homes. I think there's no question that actually for the people of Auto Trader and people literally everywhere, there have been pressures that we never even dreamed of having to face. On top of actually, from an Auto Trader perspective, being in the position where, in a matter of days, the company, for the first time ever, decided to not charge for its services through April and May. We furloughed staff for some period of time, but brought them back very quickly as soon as we can. So, and then you came into the market in June, which no doubt, or certainly all our customers know, was literally one of the strongest used car markets that anyone's ever seen, ever. So that, of course, keeps them busy. So to say that they've been busy and probably a little bit fatigued with lockdown would probably be an understatement. But the team has held together well, actually, and they've got behind retailers, and there's been a lot of positive things that I think have come out of it as well.
Nathan, that must have been a massive decision when you decided that you had to take that extraordinary measure of not charging customers back during that first lockdown. What was going through your head and the board's head when it came to making those decisions?
Yeah, it was a brave decision, but it was made on reasonably simple principles, I'd say. I think that as I was speaking to retailers, many that have done interviews with you leading up to the announcement of the lockdown, they were saying to me, sales are 80% of what they were yesterday, sales are 60%, now they're 40%, literally every day. And it was pretty clear that due to the uncertainty that was right at that point of time, consumer interest was going to drop off. The last thing people were going to think about was buying a car, and that was clearly coming through the numbers from a dealer's perspective. So we took a reasonably simple but principled view that whilst our audience was still strong, although our audience did drop off as well, so we did see signs that consumer interest was dropping. That obviously returned very, very quickly. But with consumer interest dropping, our retailers not really knowing what was going to happen with sales, and certainly not being in a position where they could click and collect and home deliver like they can now. This was new to all of us at that stage. We took the view that actually a lot of our customers are smaller businesses. A lot of our customers were a big part of their costs. So we should do the right thing. And if they can't make a profit from the services that we provide, then we should stop charging them for those services and do the right thing and stick by them. This other benefit of doing that is whenever we were going to get to the other side, we could do that with as many cars and as many of our retailers on the platform, so we could all get on with it as quickly as possible, which is really the point that we optimized for, is making sure that we focused on getting everyone out, full of demand, if you like, full of inquiries already.
It certainly has been a case of the industry having to stick together, hasn't it, over the lockdown and this second one too. We've just been informed about the new product launches that you've got coming up, and firstly, I'd like to touch on two of those. They're very interesting ones. Firstly, this guaranteed part exchange price that you're going to be rolling out, which I believe I caught Carolina saying as quarter 1 or later this year. Can you just explain to dealers watching what that will mean and how that will work?
Yeah, so the guaranteed part exchange product it falls under the umbrella of us accelerating that transition to digital retailing for our customers. So it's very much built for and to the benefit of car retailers. The way the product works today, and we've started rolling it out, we've got a small number of retailers that are already on the product, and we'll gradually increase that. But what it lets happen is a consumer on Auto Trader, imagine that they're looking at a car, one of the cars from one of the retailers. What they can then do is, once they've thought, actually, I'm quite interested in this vehicle, there's an option to then get a guaranteed price on their car as a part exchange, right there, right then, with a relatively simple condition report that we've built. So the consumer, and we've heard that consumers are 70% more likely to go into a retailer if they've got a guaranteed part exchange price done up front. So what we're then hoping, either that will go through to the dealer with the lead information saying, I'm looking to buy this car, this is the guaranteed price on my car, and here's the condition. Or the consumer could even walk into the retailer. The retailer just double checks that the appraisal's been done right, that the damage is as declared. And then the consumer can have that car part exchange. So any part exchange a dealer can do now, rather than having to decide whether or not it's a car that they want to retail on. They can do all those deals, not let any fall over, and then they make a decision afterwards as to whether they want to keep the car and retail it out of stock, or whether they want to dispose of the car and will then take that on. So it's essentially a low risk, no risk way of being able to part exchange any vehicle with Auto Trader's brand there standing behind the price that's been offered to consumers. So it's all about getting more cars into retailers in the most efficient way, which is a part exchange. No buyer's fees, no logistics, and you can see the car there.
Yeah, because I mean that's been one big problem this year, hasn't it? Getting hold of good quality used car stock, and
absolutely
those dealers who have been able to generate it via part exchanges have done pretty well. So I mean, was that something that sparked this idea, or has this been something that's long been in the making?
No, we've been talking about and looking at how we digitize the whole selling process for a number of years now. We've been talking about this product, but for a number of reasons, it's been difficult for us to be able to get in place an underwriter that's willing to rely on the same valuations that we use. It's not necessarily just been because of the nature of who the players are. So it was really doing the joint venture with Cox, forming a closer partnership with them, where they were able to step in and stand behind this product and underwrite those valuations that we offer, which we think what we're aiming for are the exact right price for a consumer, i.e. what they would get at auction otherwise. That's been the difficulty that we've had, because we didn't really feel like we're in the business of buying and selling cars. That's what our customers do. So that's been the delay. And then we've probably been building it in earnest for a year or so now, and talking to customers, talking to dealers about how their processes work, and making sure that this fits well in with it.
So this is not Auto Trader wanting to be a rival to We Buy Any Car then?
No. Well, I think that's an example. I mean, those cars do get bought and they go into the auctions where retailers can buy them, obviously. But what we're really focusing on is what does a retailer want? And what a retailer wants is really efficient stock bought into their showroom where they can appraise it at a valuation that makes sense and totally data driven. So that's really where our focus is. To be fair, earlier in the before lockdown, we had a small trial with an instant offer product, which is similar. It gives our private consumers, because we already help hundreds of thousands of private consumers sell their cars. Some of them wanted a more convenient option. So we did look at how we might be able to offer an option to just buy those cars. But really what we were doing was getting the learning so that we could launch this, getting the learnings around the appraisal process, the valuations, so we could put it into our big focus, which is obviously this guaranteed part exchange product.
And during this second lockdown, you've quickly rolled out a buy online hub on the homepage of Auto Trader. I've seen a lot of click and collect offerings from dealers, home deliveries. We've heard over the last couple of hours how successful that's been. There will be some dealers out there though worried that this could lead to Auto Trader becoming like Cinch, selling direct to consumers. And what would you say to dealers worried about that?
That we're not going to do that. I think we're very, very clear that what we think we can do over the next few years, what we think is best for our business and best for our retailers' business, is to form a partnership, unlike the partnership that sometimes we've had with some customers in the past, to really transform automotive retailing or digitize automotive retailing together. We can bring the technology, we can bring the consumers because they're on our site. We've got now, whether it's finance, whether it's part exchange, all those areas, or whether it's even delivery, we can do the technology for retailers, particularly those retailers that won't feel like they're able to do it themselves, and certainly don't feel like they can go out and raise, you know, 2 or 3 or 400 million pounds of funding at a £2 billion valuation. We don't want our customers to feel as though they're going to get left behind by this because they can't make get over that technology bridge, and that's really what we think we can do in partnership with them. So it's very much, and that buying online is a perfect example of it. It's about us getting behind and saying, actually, here are 220,000 cars you can have delivered to your home and bought digitally. It's about making that really a reality. That's where our total focus is. Not competing with our customers, but rather enabling them to compete even more effectively.
I mean, this is a huge logistics job. I mean, if this really takes off, that could be a huge number of cars that have got to be delivered, surely.
No, I think that's right. I mean, we're not, just to be clear, even with the home delivery we're talking about at the moment, most of that home delivery is actually being facilitated by the retailers themselves, which I found actually a pleasant surprise, that there were 220,000 cars on Auto Trader you could get delivered. Now, that might not be delivered in a in a branded van and with all the experience and bells and whistles that you might expect. But that being said, we already deliver around about 2,500 vehicles B2B a week through our motor trade delivery business. So we don't operate trucks. We do it in a very Auto Trader digital way, but we're already facilitating quite a lot of moves, and we are looking at being able to provide a service so retailers can also take advantage of that to deliver to the home of consumers as well.
So just to be clear, can you rule out Auto Trader ever selling cars direct to consumers?
Well, I think it's always a bit foolish to say never, but that's not our strategy. I can't see whatever would be our strategy. At the moment, what we do is we bring lots of consumers a lot of choice, and that means working with a lot of people. Any given retailer, I think, tends to be focusing on some segment of that. Our whole business model is predicated on choice. So I can't see us getting into the retailing of cars, competing with our customers. We're not a retailer. We don't do prep. We don't do production. We don't buy cars. We don't do logistics at the scale that retailers do. So I just don't think it's playing to our strengths. I think we let our retailers play to their strengths. We can play to ours, which is digital technology and systems and automating the processes.
And talking of those automated processes, I mean, another one of your new launches coming up soon is this finance part of the business, and the way that you're going to deliver fully proposed customers direct to dealers that have done it all via the Auto Trader platform. That you acquired Auto Convert, I believe that was earlier this year. You'll be able to confirm that. But can you explain to our dealers who are watching this how that's going to work and how that's going to benefit them?
Yeah, the business that Auto Convert, if we start with that, the business Auto Convert is a relatively early stage business, but they have an amazing platform, and that platform is built for retailers, businesses. So it works in the showroom, and what it fundamentally does, and the key is in the name, is it takes finance inquiries and through a CRM-like process, and having all the plumbing into the lenders, can convert those inquiries into done finance deals. So it automatically converts finance inquiries, and they've seen massive productivity uplifts when they put it into retailers, just through calls not being missed or not being made back. It's all done electronically. The reason why we were really interested in it, we do think that system from a retailer perspective is very good, and any sophisticated retailer from a finance perspective would be well worth their while getting in touch with Auto Convert. What we really want to do with that is provide a slightly simpler version that sits behind retailers on Auto Trader and enables them to collect online finance applications alongside their cars on Auto Trader. So today, when you're looking at a car, you can typically see the representative rate of the car. That's only really helpful to 51%, and that 51% of people don't know who they are. So what we want to be able to do is enable someone to check their eligibility for it without leaving marks on their credit record. And then if they want to go forward with it, actually go all the way through to applying for that, delivering, you know, a completed finance application on a car into a retailer. So very much again under the umbrella of supporting retailers, helping them digitize the process and delivering shoppers into their showrooms, or, you know, one day a fully online process.
Nathan, it's quite clear that Auto Trader is a big believer in online business, quite clearly, but also in those online transactions that will be the future. A few weeks ago, I talked to a number of different people in the industry, and the percentage that they said they believed of sales would be made by 2025 purely online was just 10%. What would Auto Trader's prediction be for that?
Well, this is going to be interesting because I've probably spoken and debated with many of the people that you're talking about there. I don't disagree. I mean, 2025, based on what's happened in 2020, is a long way away. So I don't generally make predictions that far out. But I think people that want to go all the way through the process and have the car delivered onto their driveway probably is in the 5, 10, 15%. By 2025, I suspect it's more probably like 10, 15, 20%. But I don't think those numbers are wildly out. I think our point is, and I'm glad you asked the question actually, we're not optimizing for that world where someone goes all the way through the process and presses buy online. We want to do that. We definitely want to do that. But if a customer just wants to look at the car, get a guaranteed part exchange price and do their finance application, but not complete it online, then we want to make that a digital process as well. So if they then walk into the retailer's got it all there to go, and with a couple of clicks of a button, they can take advantage of digital in the showroom. So we are building very much for an omni-channel world. And I think when you start to talk about, well, how many people might do that process, well, that could well be 70% of people in 2025, or maybe even more, that do some part of that process. And the real benefit of it for retailers, one, which is the obvious one, is that customers want to do it. A lot of customers, you know, probably 70% of customers are open to and want to do more of the car buying process online. And they want to do that because it's easier for them. So the number one reason for dealers wanting to go after this is there's an obvious opportunity to gain market share by doing what customers want. It's kind of the fundamental rule of business. I think what we've seen though in other markets is it's not just giving customers what they want. I think for retailers, they could end up doing much better out of it by selling quicker, which normally comes at much better margins, so improving profitability overall as well. So I think there's a prize to be gained for both consumers and retailers in this shift. And I don't think it's something retailers should resist at all, actually. I mean, we even saw, you know, as we've looked at moving to how do you price vehicles based on data, as you look at Auto Trader moving from a magazine business to a digital business, generally those trends that are undeniable, you're better off trying to get ahead of them or embrace those trends and go with them quick. And those that do typically do a lot better. I mean, in some cases, the ones that don't embrace those trends don't actually make it through. Certainly in our own, you know, in the classified space.
Nathan, they say the art of good business is being a good middleman. How long is it going to be before Auto Trader can fully complete the whole transaction for a dealer that's advertised its car on your website and you simply send them the money and send a truck there to pick up the car?
Yeah, we've done trials where we've done that on a small scale, where we've been able to sell cars all the way on through Auto Trader. I think what we realized through doing that is actually we need to productionize our finance side. We need to get the guaranteed part exchange. The piece that we haven't spoken about, and if I'm really honest with you, we've not yet solved it in our own heads, but we're looking at it really hard now, is actually how do you do that final piece of, well, probably the pre-final piece of reserve the car or place a deposit, and then potentially ultimately buy the car and process the payment. That reservation and deposit bit, we're reasonably confident from a technology perspective. It's relatively straightforward to see how you do it. What we need to understand better is how we integrate that into dealers' own systems and processes, so that we're not taking deposits on cars that the retailers are selling somewhere else. So it's that final piece. I think we're looking at that hard. I would like to think we're able to put, cars through that process next financial year, which, we're talking about guaranteed part exchange should come in the first part of next financial year, which for us is April. Finance will be a bit after that. And I'd like to think deposits could follow pretty quickly after that. So all within kind of a 18-month time frame. That's definitely aspirational, but it feels like we've got to be, not least because we might have more lockdowns, right? And it's important that we enable retailers to do as much as they can whilst their physical forecourts might be required to be closed.
And I think we've spoken before, and I've definitely reported on it many times, that actually the leads that are sent through to dealers, a very small proportion of them actually get opened or chased up. And there have been issues with this in the past. If you could offer that full facilitation of that deal, including deposit and payment, the job's sort of done for the dealer then, surely.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they've still got to do a lot of the job, but that's that point where I said you could sell. I think through taking this digital journey, you could sell more cars. I think conversion is probably the key reason why, actually, because you take out those calls that might not have been returned, and instead it's all happening in an automated way. The consumer's filling out the finance application, you're not waiting to hear back what their monthly outgoings are or something like that. I think there's just so much complexity. I mean, as someone that has always been in internet businesses, we know that you just put one, well, you'll know that you put one simple button that you would have thought is relatively obvious to press in any process, and there's some dropout. Well, you start putting phone calls, humans, manual intervention, paperwork, all those things just go to sales dropping out of the funnel. And I do think tightening that up digitally, that is probably the single biggest upside for retailers.
So I've got a number of other topics I'd just like to quiz you on, if you don't mind. I mean, firstly, what are you thinking is going to happen to the used car market in the short term and medium term into 2021? How would you summarise that?
My personal view and Auto Trader's view as well, underlying demand is strong. There is no question about it. We all saw it through June, July, August, September. It wasn't just about pent-up sales in April and May. That might have been some of it, but it's not about that now. It's about people wanting to avoid public transport and a renewed interest in private vehicle ownership. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. So I think we're seeing it now. So demand isn't as strong as it was 12 months ago, but that's partly because we're in the middle of a lockdown, but it's still strong and it's still up on where we were pre-COVID, which is quite exceptional, certainly when we look back to what happened in April and May. So I'm very confident that even during this period, I suspect retailers will be doing more trade than they would have perhaps expected because of that underlying strong demand and sales backed up from October. We fully expect that December will be December, which is a bit of a non-event for most retailers. Try and hang on, conserve cash, look forward to January. I think when we get to January, we still believe that demand will be there and demand will be strong. We don't quite know how strong, but you are talking about levels that are well above where we were pre-COVID, still going into next year. I think you'll still see supply being tight. The supply has been quite a hard one to call, but I think that means you've got good confidence in pricing and margin into next year as well. We definitely saw exceptional margin in the last few months due to the combination of that high demand and low supply. I think you'll still have that. It might not be as strong. We've certainly seen some funny movements in prices just in the last few days and weeks, but I think the underlying economics are there for margin to hold up. Unknown is, or a bit of an unknown, is Brexit, because obviously one of the most important determinants of used car supply. I mean, Brexit's relevant for new cars, and that's really, really important, certainly to franchise customers. But beyond that, it's actually important to the whole industry because it has been one of the big swing factors on used car supply over the last few years. So if we do see that if we do have a bad Brexit, if that's the right words, and supply chains interrupted or exchange rate is disrupted, giving, particularly European manufacturers less incentive to push into the UK, then that not only means less new cars, possibly the bigger impact is the bit of the market that everyone's focused on because it's best for profitability, it's less used cars. And that could be one of the swing factors. So that's certainly, if I had a crystal ball, that would be the number I'd be looking for.
And what about that new car market? We caught up with Martin Forbes earlier this week on a Car Dealer Live that people watch this can go back and watch as well. But he predicted that the new car market next year will be around 2 million, 2.02 million. What's Auto Trader's take on what you think the new car market's going to be like? And will there be demand out there for new cars?
Yeah, I mean, I think that forecast, which sounds like it's more or less flat if you ignore COVID, I think that would be kind of where our view is. It's very, very difficult because of this Brexit and exchange rate volatility that we're going to have. I actually think it's very, very difficult to predict new cars. But based on everything staying the same as it is today, which is the one assumption we know won't be true, but everything we saw, leading up to September particularly, because I know new cars was down. I think that's a little bit of a we didn't read too much into it because new cars seem to be trending a bit ahead, actually, flat to a bit ahead, right up to the last few days of the month, which is where all the self-registration happens. And that's not necessarily natural demand. So on a natural demand basis, it feels like we shouldn't have a year of decline of new cars like we've had for the past however many years it's been now. I'd be relatively optimistic. Obviously, what matters more to our retailers is the view that manufacturers take and how that translates into target. But I think we feel like the new cars should be able to hold at a flat, normalized kind of rate.
And a quick interlude, if I may, and if you don't mind, a few questions from our readers. We asked people on our Car Dealer forum today to submit a few questions.
Sure.
Don't worry, they're not too bad. But I was wondering whether I could just fire them at you. First one: who does Auto Trader see as their customer? Is it the dealer or the consumer?
It's a politician's answer, so I do apologise, but the answer is we see both. Our business only really exists because we've got that consumer audience, but our business only really exists because we've got our car retailer partners that we work with that pay to access that. So you say great business as being a middle person. I mean, that is definitely what we are. We have got to look to both sides of the marketplace. But I think very often where that question comes from is what I believe is a false perception that those two groups want different things. And actually, I think what we've seen, whether it's pricing, I know there's lots of talk about price flags, whether it's this digital retailing, I honestly believe, and I've spoken to, I spend a lot of time and I've got good relationships with a lot of retailers. Those retailers that have embraced those trends and got on with it are running businesses that are outperforming the average. So I really think, because at the end of the day, the consumer is their customer, and if you do a good job by that, eventually, that should be good. That should be good for your business. So I think the political answer is both, but actually, I think there's one thing we can do that benefits both, actually. So it doesn't need to be do I sit here and choose consumers or do I choose retailers? No, I choose both because that is how our business works.
It is a very difficult position to be in, and I feel your pain. On Car Dealer magazine, we have to have adverts, and then the readers will say they don't like the adverts, and I say to them,
right,
if you didn't have the adverts, you wouldn't have the content. It's a kind of catch-22 situation, isn't it? You touched on one of those points there. Another one, the next question was about those price flags. I mean, it's fair to say that not many dealers like them, but the consumers probably love them. The dealers here, the question asked was, what about when it comes to pricing good or fair, why don't you take into account the number of owners, condition, or history? What would you say to that dealer?
The first thing I would say is we do give retailers the opportunity to be able to call out those facts. And in fact, we urge them to call out why this might be above average. The problem with I would love to be able to do exactly what that retailer is suggesting. The difficulty for us is that we actually don't get the condition of the vehicle, of the specific vehicle. So what we have to, and because we don't know that specific vehicle, nor do we know all the vehicles, it's actually impossible for us to do anything but an average condition of car. So I think we're constantly looking at how we can make those price flags more and more accurate and take into account more and more aspects of what retailers provide. The one thing I would say is that we haven't seen, well, if anything, we've seen more connections between retailers and consumers as a result of those flags, because it just makes the conversation easier. I do get that, you know, no retailer is going to want a flag put on their car that says it's a high price, but there may well be, as they're suggesting, a good reason why that is. And I think we all understand that. I pay for an iPhone 5 times more than I ever thought I would pay for a mobile phone. And because I understand that there's quality that comes along with it, there's service, functionality, it might be spec. And I think we're trying to do our best to allow retailers to kind of pull that out and explain that as best they can.
And just 2 more questions here from our readers. One asks, was there the opportunity, were you considering the opportunity to offer dealers the chance to advertise double the amount of stock in December rather than cutting bills?
Yeah, we did consider it, and it's interesting because quite a few people have raised it with me. Our stock levels were actually pretty high. We just come through a stock offer period, and we felt like that wasn't the thing that retailers needed. What they really needed to do, because we could have perhaps done a stock offer, but it just didn't feel to us like it was the help retailers needed. We did it when we went into the first lockdown, which might be the reason for the question. And I think it turned out well, but the immediate response from retailers when we did that was, that's the last thing I need you to do. It's almost, not insulting is not the right way, but oh, thanks very much. I've got to close my business and you're letting me put twice as many cars on Auto Trader. So as it turned out, it worked out all right. So it was something that we looked at. We decided we wanted to be more extreme than that and go with the December free and just push the invoice back and, you know, be bold, be decisive and just get it done.
And Nathan, the one that we get asked a lot, and this one that's been mentioned as soon as I raise this one, is people make the point, Auto Trader sells my cars, they do a great job, I get the most amount of leads for Auto Trader, but they're always putting their prices up and they're expensive. I mean, that must be quite a frustrating thing for you, because on one hand, they're saying that the product works and is doing the job, but on the other side, they're still moaning. What do you say to those customers? Because I'm sure many people ask you a similar question.
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, we'll get that people will say that we're the most expensive, but I think the problem is it's very difficult. Normally when any of us make that comment, it's because we're on Amazon, we're looking at 2 things that look, you know, very, very similar, and one seems to be 20% more than the other, and you say it's expensive, or one's 10 times or 4 times more than the other. I think the problem is retailers really don't have a lot to compare Auto Trader to. So I think there's ways of responding to it. If you look at the size of our audience, we've got 578 million minutes are spent on Auto Trader every single month, which is a mind-boggling number. It's probably 20 times the nearest competitor, and I can bet you the nearest competitor is probably not charging a 20th of the price. So it's quite a difficult one to answer. I think at the end of the day, I'd like to think that the reason why we work is because we have got a really, really large audience. Now, in order to get that, we have to invest more, and that means our prices tend to be higher, because the thing that you're getting is so much different. It's not just about getting your cars online anymore. It doesn't really matter if you've got something online, as you'll know in your own business. What matters is whether people are looking at it or not. So it's a difficult one. We do listen to our retailers. We're always trying to improve. That's why we're putting database products into our packages. When we spoke to retailers about value, that was an area that they spoke about. We're always checking our return on investment. And because car prices have been going up over time, it pretty much looks like, if you imagine the proportion of a dealer's budget that Auto Trader accounts for at a big global level is more or less the same as what it was kind of 5 years ago, because car prices are kind of ticked along at 3%, 4%, and 5%. But look, we understand that we're a big cost and retailers invest a lot in Auto Trader. They have my word that we're working as hard as we possibly can to ensure that they get as much value out of it as they can. And I think there's very few retailers that wouldn't be in a position to be able to pick up the phone to their account director or their account manager and say, I'd like to know how I can get more out of my spend with Auto Trader, and they'll be able to get more. It doesn't necessarily lower the cost, but I think it's one and the same thing. And there are lots of those opportunities, whether it's pricing, prominence, stock turn. There are loads of ways I think we can and want to help retailers. That's really that partnership that I spoke about at the beginning.
So just the last couple from me, Nathan. How would you summarise Auto Trader's strategy of helping car dealers going forward into 2021?
I would say we want to partner with retailers. We see this as an era where we can partner with retailers to help digitally transform automotive retailing. That's what we all know is going to happen, and we want dealers to be able to be part of that. That is our strategy. Our strategy is to be the enabler to help any retailer of any size get there fast and not lose share to some of the other perhaps better funded competitors that might be able to get there quicker.
And lastly, what would be your single piece of most important piece of advice for car dealers to concentrate on right now?
Wow, that's a big question, especially at a time like this.
Yeah,
I think what we saw during June, right up to the lockdown, was some of the strongest market that we've ever seen, and most retailers did well. The retailers that did best, though, were those that were brave and willing to act on it actually during April and May. So I think the single biggest piece of advice I would have for retailers is, do everything that you can to trade as well as you can whilst we're in this lockdown period and whenever we might come out of it. But the focus should really be on January, and I would ensure that not only make sure that you have the stock, but using data to price your cars when prices are changing and in particular going up has never ever been more important to margin, and margin is the big swing factor in any retailer's business. So I think in the short term it's that. In the medium term, I would say I would do everything you can to digitize as much of your business as you possibly can. That doesn't mean you have to go from having a forecourt to not having a forecourt and doing home delivery. But I think the quicker you do that, the better protected you'll be from any future COVID lockdowns. And actually, it looks like there's really good returns in your business longer term as a result of doing that.
Great advice, Nathan. Thank you very much for being so open with us today and giving up so much of your time to chat to our dealer viewers. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure, James. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Great to see Nathan there. Then thank you ever so much for that. Okay, if you want more Car Dealer Lives like this one, you can log on to cardealermagazine.co.uk and click on the Live tab at the top of the page. If you'd like to be involved in future Car Dealer Lives, you can contact me. I'm James at Blackball Media. You can find me on Twitter at CarDealerEd or find me on LinkedIn. I'll see you next time. Thanks ever so much for watching. Goodbye.